Welcome to another episode of the More Than a Game podcast. I'm your host, Dan Walls, and today on the podcast, I'm joined by NBL legend, or former NBL legend, I should say, and former Australian boomer, Ben Madgen. Ben played 5 seasons with the Sydney Kings back in 2010, where he was named also NBL Rookie of the Year. He was named the Most Improved Player in 2013 and also earned all NBL honours in that year as well. He led the league in scoring in the 2012-2013 season and has also been named in the Sydney Kings 25th anniversary team. He left the NBL not long after his time with the Kings to play a number of successful stints across Europe before returning to play in the 2019-2020 season with the newly formed South East Melbourne Phoenix. He's recently retired. As I said, he's played for the Australian national team. He's had an incredible career, and we look forward to hearing it all today on the More Than a Game podcast. Ben Madgen, welcome to the More Than a Game podcast.
Thanks a lot, Dan. Lovely to be here.
It's great to see you, mate, and thanks for joining us today. It's a remarkable career you've had, and we'll dive into it today, and I'm interested and keen to hear all about it. But I'll start as I start all the podcasts with your journey, I guess, and how that began, how that started. You come from a basketball family because your sister Tess also plays at the high level, the Opals, and also in the WNBL. So, where did it all begin for you? Where did that love and that joy of basketball come from?
Yeah, so it's interesting kind of how we fell into basketball because mum and dad never played. My mum's 6 foot, so they asked her to try out at the North Adelaide Rockets back in the day. She said she was too uncoordinated, didn't last long. But she was an amazing race walker, believe it or not. I think it was a long limbs. And Dad was a really good footy player, AFL footy player, but blew out both his knees really young, early 20s. And so his career got cut short. But heard many good stories about Dad. I think that's where I got my aggression on the court from, that's for sure. But yeah, we just played all different sports growing up. You know, tennis, cricket, basketball, footy, athletics, did some swimming. So just kind of really enjoyed basketball. Enjoyed the kind of notion that you could travel the world if you were good enough. But I really played Aussie rules footy. All my mates played Aussie rules footy. And then at 17, really had to make a decision. Both of the training regimes were really ramping up, and I couldn't do both. So that's kind of where I chose basketball. And it was probably my nana who gave me the final word was footy's too dangerous, too many injuries. My uncles played in the AFL. One lost his kidney, a couple of shoulders, knees, but I ended up getting my fair share of injuries in basketball anyway, so I don't know if that mattered. But yeah, that's kind of how I fell into basketball. And obviously Tess and then Jack went to college for basketball as well, so they really enjoyed it too. We had some great battles in the backyard. It was me versus both of them because they were younger. I was the oldest. But yeah, just really loved the game, and I'm so happy that I did end up choosing basketball, being able to travel the world and meet some amazing people. And then, obviously after basketball now, still being able to use the game as a tool to be able to give back to the community through charity bounce. So it's been quite a journey.
Absolutely, mate. And yeah, I'll come to charity bounce in a moment because I've had Cal Bruton on, I've had Tracy Williams, who you work with, and heard a bit about the organisation, so we'll touch on that. But we'll go back to most recently, obviously, the South East Melbourne Phoenix. That's your most recent team and only just recently retired. What led to that decision? I feel like you may have had a couple more years in you, but obviously there was a reason behind that. So what was the reasons that led behind your retirement?
Yeah, totally. So first of all, when we're in Germany, we had decided we'd gone over with no kids, my wife and I, and now we had 2. We had a really horrifying experience with our youngest, Mac. He was in hospital for about a month with RSV, and he couldn't breathe. And my wife spent a month in hospital with him. I was playing, and I had Xavier at home, our eldest. So that was a really tough time, and we just, 4 years in Europe, It's very isolating. Great for basketball, but really tough on family. So we said, yeah, let's go back. The Sydney Kings have been talking to me, Jeff and Gazy, each off season, just gauging if I'd like to come home. A few contract offers. And then when I finally said, I'm going to come home, they said, oh, we're not sure about. I think they knew they weren't going to be there the next year.
All right.
AEG was being bought out, so they couldn't offer a deal at the time. And I had also been talking to Tommy Greer for many years since I went to Europe, and he reached out and said he'd love, to be part of the team. They got Creaky and some other guys on the radar, so I was able to sign, I think, in January or February. So it was really convenient. I already had a house in Melbourne lined up. Everything was set for a smooth transition. So we were around our, support network. My sister and brother were in Melbourne. So that's how it happened to get to Southeast Melbourne. Had a few chats to Simon and really liked what they were doing and, the concept behind what the team was going to look like. Obviously, it's always hard starting a brand new franchise. I did it with the Kings almost 2010 after the hiatus, and I think we won our first game and lost the next 14. So I see you got the Tommy. Is that Tommy Garlett? Was that
No, that's Damien Ryan behind me.
So Damien Ryan.
That's his jersey because I was working with the Kings back then. So
Damo's a great guy. We had an awesome chat. Still chatting. Now he's in Melbourne. And he went to Italy halfway through that season.
That's right.
But so getting back to it, and then I had a really enjoyable time in Melbourne. Where I was offered a probably lesser role, lesser money, but was highly contemplating returning. But then, we wanted to really get around my wife's support network as well in Sydney. So thought we could play back with the Kings. But, with my son, he was diagnosed with autism and was getting really, really quite difficult. Every time I was going on the road, it would be really hard on him. And my wife, would be left to pick up the pieces. So it almost was a no-brainer. When I thought, I've got to put the family first. Now I've been doing this for over a decade. It's not the best thing for the family anymore. And they're my number one priority. So, I could have played, a few more years, I think. I still, got asked by the Kings if I was interested to play again this year. And last year, I think I had about 5 or 6 calls during the season to come back. But, the timing's not right. And I'm at peace with, my career. If it was just me, I would have kept playing. But, Xavier's doing really well.
Good.
My son, and he's come a long way. And I just think, I would never regret the decision 1 second because, at the end of the day, to play a couple more years, but to, really put your son's kind of development at jeopardy, it was a no-brainer for me. So I'm loving family life, really enjoying the next chapter. I won't say it hasn't been hard. I think especially, my wife kind of seeing it from the outside, when you're kind of in that, insular kind of bubble, it's hard to see yourself maybe acting a little bit differently or not as perky and not as much energy as you usually have. And I think it took me a while to kind of come to grips with that. Tried to just stay busy. But now I'm, playing more golf and trying to challenge or channel my competitiveness, I think, is into getting my handicap down. So
it's funny.
I'm a competitive person, and I just think for, the first year out of retirement, I didn't really have anything to kind of channel in that competitiveness. And, I'm really enjoying that at the moment. So that's been great.
That's awesome, mate. I've been getting into the golf myself, and apologies for closing the blinds. I've got this
that's all right.
sun coming at me here, already burnt as it is. But you touched on the transition. So you went, I was going to come to this later on, but you went from obviously starting up with the Kings and being part of that comeback season, if you will. And then number of years in Europe, which we'll come to again. But coming back to the NBL after being out for so long, did you notice the difference in the league, the professionalism, and I guess what was the comparison like starting up with the Kings back in 2010 compared to, again, joining a new team in the Phoenix, and the comparisons between those those teams?
Yeah, I think the league's come a long way. Obviously, money really helps, but also the exposure. You know, a lot of people talking about it overseas now. I think we always had a really talented league, but I don't think it was put on display like it is now, which is really, it's great to see. You know, more eyeballs, even translated into the TV deal this year, which is fantastic. But the professionalism also got, you know, better with, you know, we had our own chef in Southeast Melbourne, and, you know, they really looked after our needs and made sure we were, you know, really happy and family life was good. And I think, you know, the care factor was really there. But, you know, when I first started with the Kings too, it was a really nice community. But I think anytime you're starting a new club, it's difficult. And I say, like, the Kings starting a new club, but we really did start from scratch then. And I think, you know, just the facilities are better now, where the Kings were training, you know, kudos. They had their own training facility. That's come a long way. We first started at Macquarie University. And I love shooting after practice, and sometimes I'd be shooting and the rings would go up and about 100 badminton students would run on the courts. So, you know, it was frustrating at times, but, you know, we always found a way to, ended up going to different schools and schools with a gun to be able to fire the ball back at me. So, you know, when there's a will, there's a way. But I think, you know, now it's a little bit more, you know, easier for the players to just focus on basketball and you know, even on the road, and you see the crowds and everything, it's really professional. And I think they've done a great job, almost like trying to emulate the NBA in a smaller scale. And I think, why not? You know, the best league in the world, you know, if you can do that at a smaller scale and attract these big talented players like Next Stars and LaMelo Ball, I think, you know, it's a fantastic job that Larry and the team have been doing in the NBL.
100% agree with you. And you mentioned there just perfecting your shot, and you were known for your three-point shot, and again led the league in scoring all those years back. But had Shane Heal, your former coach, on the podcast last time, and I was chatting to him about, you know, the work to put into, like, mastering your shot basically and getting it right to the point where it's the same every time it's coming out of the hand. So just for the younger viewers out there, if there are any, how many hours did you put into crafting your shot and just you know, the level of commitment required to get to that level?
Yeah, so I always made it a kind of a personal ambition to always be the hardest working player on the team. Whichever club I went to, whether it was Europe, college, NBL. And so, you know, I would always get there at least an hour and a half early for every practice, sometimes two. As I got older, I kind of, you know, started doing more recovery, etc., not just the big grinding workouts. You know, if someone beat me to practice, I'd always come earlier the next day. So I think at least an hour before and an hour after every practice, because practice, you know, a lot of players use practice as their time to hone their skills, but it's really not. That's more the team concepts, and you don't want to rely on the coaching staff to be putting in shooting drills, etc. You know, at the professional level, this is into, you know, practice. I think you really got to take that upon yourself to develop your own skill set. You know, when Shane came in, I didn't really have a very good step back jumper. And he's like, you need the step back jumper. So, you know, I just kept working on that by myself with his guidance, you know, and then I'd go away with his teachings and really work on that step back jumper and coming off screens at really fast pace. You know, so it slowed down in the game. And that's what I really, you know, forged out a European career with, coming off those screens. So, yeah, it's all the hours off the practice floor, you know, the team training sessions that you've really got to put in. And I think at least an hour before and an hour after practice is what you really need to be doing. And then on your off days, you got to come in as well. And, you know, people say you need to rest and load management and that now, but I think, you know, you can still get a workout in and do an ice bath after, or get a massage. And I know it's, you know, sometimes harder for younger players, but yeah, I think you always just have to be in, ready to go, and doing game speed workouts. So I'd say at least, you know, a couple of hours a day to really perfect that art. But I will say one thing, Shane's still incredible. Like he won't have shot for, you know, a month.
Yeah.
And then he would just go like 10 out of 10 bang. I'm like, oh, this is depressing.
I know. Even seeing those hammer time segments he was doing with the current players, like
he's insane.
Yeah, incredible player, incredible shooter. But going back to you mentioning the college career, it'd be amiss of me not to mention it, because you did have your number one jersey retired there. That's saying something about the success you had in the college level with Augusta Jaguars, I think it was.
Yeah.
So you spent the time there, and what was that experience like? Obviously, that was sort of the way or the pathway for a lot of younger players back then. It's not so much now. I think the NBL is such a aspiration of young players, but you know, the college system, everyone seemed to get over there. So what was that experience like back then?
Yeah, like there's over, I think, 200 plus players in college now. Back when I went in 2006, you know, you could count them on your hand virtually how many players were in the States. But you know, we didn't even have YouTube back then. I was sending out DVDs to colleges everywhere, all over the States, writing emails, still taking calls on the landline. So it was a bit of a different world. But yeah, it was amazing. I just kind of ended up in a really great situation. You know, I know a lot of players, you know, think Division 1 or nothing. I think that's, you know, kind of a closed mindset. I went to a Division 2 school. We ended up being number one in the nation and beating a lot of Division 1 schools. But I was able to play all 4 years. I started all 4 years, kind of went there as an unknown and came back on, you know, a lot of teams' radars, even though it was quite difficult still to get an NBL gig. But I think playing and you're practicing so much that you want to play at the end of the day. That's where your development really comes from, being in these high-pressure situations. So I really loved it, and I wouldn't change it. You know, I had some kind of initial talks with some Division 1 teams, and I don't know if it would have been a good fit. You know, I could have been sitting on the bench for, you know, 3 years and finally playing my last year. But, you know, would that be a great experience playing basketball? I always thought going to college, you know, the percentage that end up playing professional is pretty slim. So if you could, I figured if I could do something pretty cool with basketball, get a degree, play in the States for 4 years, have an awesome experience. You know, if I don't end up going pro, that's pretty incredible, you know, something to come out of playing basketball and playing sport. So that was kind of my mindset. But as I kind of had more success, I really wanted to play professionally. I thought I was good enough. Not many other people did, I guess. But yeah, I think for the younger kids, I hear a lot. It's like, oh no, I only want to go Division 1. I'm not talking to that team, they're Division 2. But if it's a good situation, there's a lot of players that played in the NBL that played at Division 2, and I think it's because they got to play and they developed so much faster. So don't be dead set on Division 1. You know, I've seen future, you know, boomer Australian, you know, touted to be the next boomer and sit on the bench for 4 years. And now, you know, not even sure if they play anymore. So it can be difficult going to a big Division 1 school. But, you know, if that's your path, you know, it can work out really well too. You could end up in the NBA. But, yeah, I think just have an open mindset though, and you know, listen to every coach and what they have to say, and it might be a great fit somewhere that you weren't thinking.
That's awesome. And I think well, just reflecting on, again, as I said, having your jersey retired, it must be pretty, feel pretty honoured about that situation, even to go back there and see your jersey up there. So what was that emotion like when you got told that your jersey was going to be retired?
Yeah, well, I haven't actually been back. Maybe one day we will, but It was actually a really big surprise. It was our last regular season game. So I was very lucky, fortunate to be the only player to have their jersey retired while they were still playing. But I think it had a lot to do with that I was Australian. Like, well, once he goes to Australia, we can't really, invite him back easily. So I actually saw it go up. And it was a funny story too, actually. My coach was standing next to me and he goes, "Oh my God, did they spell your name wrong?" And it had Magden. And I'm like, "Oh, I wouldn't have even noticed." I'm like, "They did." So they had to pull it down and put it back up again. But that's happened to me all throughout even in the NBL. I played in New Zealand, the D and the G always gets mixed up for some reason.
There you go. It's the same as my name, mate. They always put a T in mine.
Yeah.
So I know the feeling. But I'll just step back a bit because one thing I didn't realize about you, obviously you go to the Kings after that, and you mentioned that. And I remember when you signed, there was this big hot shot from the college system coming to play for the Kings. I thought this would be cool. And I was actually, as I said, doing a bit of work with them back then. But you actually were a development player with the 36ers, is that right? Adelaide 36ers. So you got the chance to play with guys like Brett Maher and Oscar Foreman's been on the podcast. I imagine he would have been in the team at that point as well. But obviously back then, that was for me, growing up watching the NBL, that was a great side. Phil Smythe coaching, Brett Maher, as I said, Martin Catalini, all these guys that played for the 36ers. But what was that experience like being a part of that system?
Yeah, it was fantastic. I mean, it was about, I'd say maybe 15 players invited from the ABA. Back then, the NBL one, they call it now South. And I was pretty lucky to get invited. I had a decent season. My coach, Richard Hill, at the time, I think, put in a good word. And I went to the camp as kind of an unknown and ended up being picked with Brad Gerlach as the two development players and beat out a lot of other guys, some that went to the AAS or, they were in Sassy and things like that. So I think that was a great camp for me. And then it gave me my first taste of, how to be a professional. The group was a bit older, so it was more like practice, go home. Marzi they were veteran guys, but guys that I gravitated around with Jacob Holmes and Oscar Foreman. Used to shoot with Oscar Foreman after every practice, and he was just lights out. I think he led the league in three-point shooting that year, and he was just an incredible shooter. So that was great to see that work ethic of, what it's going to take to be such a great shooter like Ozzy was. So had some great mentors then. I was really young. There was a rule, I don't know if it's still a rule, but if you get any professional minutes, you can't go to college. So after a few months, I really thought, I want to go to college and give that a crack. Instead of 30-second junk time at the end of a game. So I never played a second, which I was really happy about in the end, being able to go to college. But learning under Phil Smythe and sitting on the bench for every home game was just really, really cool and a great experience. I think one that really kind of wet my whistle for, all right, let's go to college, work as hard as I can, and hopefully I can play in one of these teams one day.
Yeah, it's awesome. Conscious of time for you because I know you got to go. But one thing I'll touch on is this. I remember you made your Boomers debut. Fast forward a number of years, had all that success with the Kings, and then you get selected in the Boomers squad. And I do remember you obviously injured your ankle really badly in training, and you didn't get to play in the end, did you? In that?
Yeah, I played the first game. It was just a shoot around, and then we had one more game. So I was in between two games versus China, and then we'll fly into China the day after that. And I just remember it was a non-tape session, but it got a bit competitive it was almost like a dummy contest. You were supposed to just like a token hand in the face, but then, we had two teams and everyone was going pretty hard. And I just remember Gibbo, I closed out and I jumped, and he jumps forward when he shoots. And so my foot just came down on his. And at first I thought I just rolled it really badly. And then I looked down and the sole of my shoe was facing up. And I was like, oh, that's not good. So went into a bit of a panic. And then, they gave me the green whistle and everything was all right after that. But, it was 5 months of really, I was actually really lucky. I lived in an apartment complex in Sydney right next to the physio, the team physio. So I would walk or crutch down every morning and spend like 2 hours in the physio. I had nothing else to do. And so I think that really fast-tracked, the recovery. So I was super lucky it worked out like that. But even after 5 months, I came back, felt like I had a lead foot for a while and had a bit of a slow start to the season, but then started to pick it up again once I got the movement and everything back.
Yeah, tough times. I think these sort of things teach us so much, particularly when we go through hardships and suffering. And translating now this to your post basketball career, I guess, obviously working for Charity Bounce, as we said, and giving back in that capacity. But just in name of the podcast, More Than the Game, what are some of the life lessons that you've learned from the game of basketball that you've been able to translate into your life now as a dad, as a husband, or just in life in general?
Yeah, I think as a sportsman, you have to overcome a lot of adversity. And I kind of tried to keep it even keeled throughout my career. So, I see a lot of players, if they have like 30 points the next day, kind of come into practice. And it's all good to have confidence. But I always tried, if I had a donut, I'd still come in, an hour and a half early, shoot, do my same routine. If I had 35, I'd still do the same thing. So I think that kind of helped me having that mindset. So when I did have adversity or great times, it was always kind of even keeled in the middle. But I think just being able to have those adverse, challenges and being able to work through them, no matter what it is, whether it's through hard work, sometimes taking a step back, reaching out for help. The amount of times I called Shane Hill when I was in Lithuania, having a tough time with the coach. And I think you just always find a way. You don't give up. And I think that's the same with life. You're going to have some pretty crappy times. You're going to have some times that are awesome. As long as you just kind of keep powering ahead and reaching out to as many people as you can that you think can help, but also working hard to, find a solution and not give up is a really thing that I try and install in my kids. And in Charity Bounce, our overarching theme is resilience. So that's what we're trying to build in the participants. And, that's what life's about, is just being resilient to be able to take on life's challenges. And sport's great for that because you get your fair share. You can be top of the world one day and next day, you feel smaller than the ground you're walking on. So I think that's definitely what I've taken out of sport.
That's awesome, mate. Well said. I agree 100%. But it's been a pleasure speaking with you today, Ben, and hearing part of your story. I'd love to go on, and maybe another day we'll do that. But I appreciate your time, mate, and thank you for joining the More Than a Game podcast.
No, thanks, Dan. Really appreciate it, mate. It was great to talk to you.